Okay, we're going to take a look at multiple alleles here now. Now, you've seen probably some previous videos on this. Again, the key with multiple alleles is that there's not just two alleles, a dominant and a recessive. When there is just a dominant and recessive, we can get away with using a capital letter and a small case letter. But when there's multiple alleles for a particular trait, we have to use a different system, right? So that's the system of using superscripts. So if you remember the legend that we talked about previous to this, we said, and this is the one with the fruit flies, we said that if you have, so here's our little legend just off in the corner. Now normally in a question it's going to have all this information, what's dominant to what or what's recessive, but we're just going to go on previous questions just to kind of obtain our legend here. So we know that if you have a E for eye color and a superscript number 1, doesn't matter what our other allele is. We still know though alleles are in pairs, but it doesn't matter what this other allele is. As long as I have an E1, that's always going to be a wild type red. We'll just put red in here. Okay, we know now that if I have an E2, okay, doesn't matter what the other allele is, we know it can't be an E1, because if it's an E1, it's going to be red. That's dominant over E2. But if it's E2, any other allele other than an E1, it's going to be a apricot. And E3, again, doesn't matter what the other allele is, but it can't be an E2 or an E1, because order of dominancy goes, of course, by the numbering system, 1, 2, 3. So if it's an E3, doesn't matter what the other allele is, that's going to be honey. And if we are an E4, E4. Now, this is the most recessive trait out of eye color for fruit flies. So we're going to put both of them in to make this legend functionable, and that's going to be white. Okay, and that's the only way we can get a white. If there's any other allele in it, it's not going to be white. You have to have both alleles recessive for that expression to take place. Okay, so step 1, as we've been doing all the different steps, and again, we're starting to get progressively a little bit tougher, more complex questions. Started out with monohybrids. This is the next kind of level. It's still a monohybrid, but it's a monohybrid with multiple alleles to represent a particular trait. Okay, step 2, underline the parents. Identify the genotypes of a cross between a heterozygous wild red fly with honey allele. That's one parent. Okay? Crossed with a heterozygous apricot fly with a white allele. Okay? So those are our two parents. So finishing up step 2, we want to put their genotypes just above them. Okay, so heterozygous red. So if it's red, right here, it must have at least an E1. And it is telling you it's heterozygous, so we know it can't be an E1, but they're telling you it's with a honey allele. So honey allele, we go take a look at our legend, honey allele is E3. Okay, that's the genotype of that parent. Now we're going to take a look at the heterozygous apricot. So if it's apricot, must have at least an E2, and it's telling you also that this one has a heterozygous other allele being white. So that is E4. Okay, so again, genotypes are still in pairs. It's just that we have multiple alleles expressing eye color in fruit flies. Okay, now that we have both genotypes for the parents, we're able to progress to step 3, which is the Punnett square. So just a game of X's and O's. That's how we set up that Punnett square, just like before. It's still a monohybrid. And we're just going to pop it in. We don't know which one is male or female, so it doesn't matter which one we put aside, but we're going to break up these genotypes and isolate them into gametes across and down the side of the Punnett square. So we'll just put the E1, E3 over here. That's going to be the eggs. And then E2, the other parent down the side. E4, that's going to be the sperm. Okay, now we're going to bring these guys together to simulate fertilization. And again, just like we did in those previous set of monohybrid questions, the simplistic ones, we still show the dominant allele first. So E1 is dominant over E2, so we're going to put this guy first. And we're just going to bring this sperm over here, E2. And like we did before, we're going to put the phenotype just in the box with it. So E1, E2, go take a look at our legend. If there is an E1, doesn't matter what the other allele is, it's going to be red. That fruit fly offspring is going to have red eyes. Okay, and then we continue on with that. So E1, again, show the dominant first. E4, again, if you have E1, doesn't matter what the other allele is, still going to be red. And this one, E2 comes before E3 in dominancy, so we are going to show the E2 first. Go take a look at our legend. Anything with an E2, doesn't matter what the other allele is. Again, it can't be an E1, but anything other than that, it will be apricot. Okay, and this one, E3 comes before E4 in dominancy. So we'll write that first. Take a look. E3, doesn't matter what the other allele is. Has to be something, either another E3 or something recessive. But that's going to be honey. Okay, and then all we have to do now is indicate the genotypes. Well, let's just do a ratio. Doesn't look like the question is asking for it, but we're going to do the ratio anyway. So if we count up the reds, we're going to have 2 reds. Use our ratio here. 1 apricot. A lot of people will ask, well, what should come first, the apricot or the honey? Generally speaking, you should go into order of dominancy with your ratio as well, unless they ask you otherwise. Okay, so we're going to see some numerical response questions where they'll just ask whatever order they want. You just put the appropriate ratio number in the right spot, and we'll explain that and show that later. There's a question coming up later on that. And then, of course, 1 for our honey. And even though the question didn't ask, that is the phenotypic ratio with a cross between those 2 parents. Okay, any issues, give me an email and we can address it with you. Okay, thanks guys.